Okay, I'm gonna do a video. It's a response video to JJ. He had mentioned in his very lengthy uh, response video to the End at the Win It Ninjutsu video that having me from that military background and my application of it, he wanted to hear some things about it. So I kind of broke this down into bullet points. Kinda. Actually had to type this up because I wanted to make sure I got everything being here to try to condense it. So this is my response to John Johnson on being in ninjutsu to win it. The first point I want to make is this: in the enlightenment of warfare thing, experiencing conflict leads to understanding basic human interaction. Facing death puts a perspective on your life, the things you value, and how you wish to be remembered, the legacy you wish to leave behind, things like that. Warfare isn't about enlightenment. That is true. I make no claim that it does. However, there are certain aspects, such as that whole facing death thing, that can lead to a certain level of enlightenment in the individual. So, getting to point two, concerning the way in which I use ninjutsu, you have to understand why I became involved in ninjutsu. First off, I had a very crazy childhood. Most of the people I went to school with knew almost nothing about me. I started in karate when I was 2.5, 3 years old, and I moved on to study several different martial arts, training in McDojos, yes, and I was a child black belt, woohoo. Uh, which actually was a good experience because it taught me that belts really don't matter, the certificates and that stuff really doesn't matter, it's what you use it with, how you use it, that really matters. Now, all this stems from my father being high on PCP and trying to kill my mom. So I suffered a childhood trauma, but unlike most children, um, I who become scared of violence and shy away from it, I wanted to become stronger. And ninjutsu, as it was advertised as the world's deadliest martial art, attracted my attention. However, training with the Kokaru guys, I had more training in survival, disguise, stealth, espionage training. And it's a very interesting perspective in and of itself, um, because it enlightened me to understanding something. Martial arts and ninjutsu, and I don't want to make this about martial arts, but I have to include martial arts in this, and ninjutsu have always been a means of self improvement for me. Uh, I came to understand that strength is defined in very different ways. It's not just one's physical abilities, it includes intellect, reasoning, education, self education being the key here, creativity, understanding, self discipline, and mental toughness. All of these things, uh, there's a bee flying around my head, um, are what constitutes strength, and not just strength on one level, but totally and completely. The strength of the individual in all the many myriad forms that it appears. So, uh, understanding that and having that perspective, dogs barking, sorry, uh, you come to see a little bit of how I apply things and why I apply things the way I do. Uh, Now, how I use ninjutsu, I've used it several different times, sometimes without the purest of intentions. When I convinced a girl's boyfriend that I with her gay coven because he was homophobic and it meant he would actively avoid me. I didn't have to avoid him. That was ninjutsu. Uh, when I started talking to regulars at a Burger King uh, to appear to fit in with the school teachers working in Seoul, Korea while violating my curfew in the army, that was ninjutsu. When I made friends with an MP and gave him a cover story of being a school teacher, uh, giving him details of little things that I've picked up from conversations that I eavesdropped on from hanging out with so many school teachers and stuff. Just to have someone in the area who knew me and would vouch for my cover story, that was ninjutsu. Uh, when I filed a judicial ethics complaint espousing conspiracy by police officers, prosecutor, and judges, then publicly showing court documents and asking a question on YouTube to prompt the prosecutor to ask that question, which answer benefited me, especially if the truth was told. But even with it being on a lie from my accuser, it still benefited me. in court. It prompted the prosecutor to assist in that my accuser committing perjury. Uh, that was ninjutsu. When I recorded police officers threatening me, filed a complaint mentioning the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, a common law principle that prevents the police from charging you with a crime for finding evidence of a crime by knowingly using a false statement to go into for an unrelated crime. That that prompted the police to go back and try to fabricate a second search warrant to get around that, which they later denied when we wanted the search warrant because they had fabricated documentation, all in trying to cover it for a local deputy who assisted my uncle in getting away with molesting his son, my cousin. That was ninjutsu. Uh, when I wined and dined members of a certain organized crime family in my area and then went into business with them selling drugs to get information, playing the role of a person I'm not. That was ninjutsu. When I bribed Hooters girls and an IHOP busboy to feed me information about conversations by local police who frequented those establishments. Uh, and to keep me from being busted while I was selling drugs to get involved with these people to find out what's going on in this crime family. That was ninjutsu. Several times I used people as disposable agents without giving them any training or even making them aware of my activities, playing into fears of exposure and how several local police are involved in growing and supplying weed, robbing one drug dealer, and then turning over a smaller portion of drugs when they charge them, while having informants and family resell the rest. And which magistrate's son is a pedophile protected by her mommy's connection with local law enforcement. That's all ninjutsu. When I requested a psychological examination to prove my sanity because calling me crazy is the easiest way to dismiss my evidence. Looking at not only what I wanted to do and needed to do, but how those in said positions of authority might try to counter it. That was ninjutsu. That whole planning ahead and positioning my pieces before I even came into play. Uh, Positioning myself with evidence and public awareness to get the local courts and police to expose themselves by taking illegal actions. That was ninjutsu. Pointing this out in court before a local news team. That was ninjutsu. As the 10 days contempt of court was just bait to draw the news coverage in at the trial. To guarantee that this would air, which directed people to looking at my YouTube videos and seeing the evidence. That was ninjutsu. Um, Ninjutsu isn't jumping around in black gis and doing martial arts. Ninjutsu is strategy and espionage. Revealing information or concealing information to control the actions, reactions, and interactions of others, and preventing others from doing so to you. As the saying goes, the wise win first, then fight. Ninjutsu is the art of winning, but it's the art of winning by strategy. As Stephen Nigeri says, it's about self-understanding, understanding that self-discipline and self-direction are being free of the controls and manipulations and influence of others, which you learn how to do yourself. So by knowing how to manipulate others, you know how to be free of manipulation because you know how others will manipulate you. Knowing how, people will position things for their own purposes, uh, that likewise becomes an issue. That keep you from being exploited by others. Uh, Point three: gathering intelligence, manipulation, tactics, organizing a series of immediate plans of action, tactics, and strategy, which is short and long-term planning, are principles that you learn in application of warfare. But to quote Clausewitz here, war is just a continuation of policy by other means, also sometimes translated as politics. Um, Understanding warfare is understanding conflict. Japanese businessmen study Musashi's Book of Five Rings and Sun Tzu's Art of War because warfare is just a conflict in another form. Understanding the nature of conflicts, uh, politics, and strategy is an application and is its application is applicable to the courtroom, the street, the boardroom, the barroom. Even if you have a formula to manipulate others, it's pointless unless you are free from manipulation yourself, and that requires a certain level of personal enlightenment, I guess you would say. Um, The philosophy of accepting hardship and being mentally tough is one thing to study, but that same mindset must be lived. Quoting Neo from the Matrix, there is a difference between walking the path. I'm sorry, a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. It's one thing to quote a philosophy or to practice a martial art that espouses Bushido. It's a very different thing to live by the values of Bushido. Uh, Talking about honor is one thing. Putting on a kimono and acting like someone who lived by honor is another. Living with honor is still something completely different. Yes, you're guilty of LARPing, JJ. So was I. I mean, I think all of us were in the Ninjutsu community at some point in time. So, hey, but you know what? It's like this. I was playing a role, and eventually I became that role. I spent years reading about samurai philosophy and other warrior philosophies, for that matter, and quoting them as a credo. But but none of this really mattered until I willingly accepted facing my own death, willingly accepting that philosophy as not just something I studied, but as finding that place within myself brings a form of enlightenment. Martial arts and ninjutsu, and I have to point this out here in this direction, don't teach you enlightenment. Uh, but putting them into practice, living by those values and accepting them as part of yourself, accepting your death in service to an idea or a goal, freeing yourself from ego, wearing many masks, metaphorically speaking, um, and well, it comes down to this. Nothing I can say will express the things I'm trying to speak of. They have to be experienced. Um, they cannot be experienced in a dojo or by reading scrolls or what have you. Walking the path means living the adventure. Uh, we all go through those phases of learning. First we learn the skills, then we understand the principles that the skills are made from. Then we practice those things and master them. And in mastering them, we learn something about ourselves and come closer to self mastery. Uh, to paraphrase Buddha here, all life is conflict. So we must joyously participate in the conflict that is life. Uh, Whenever you're dealing with other human beings, are always trying to push their goals, their agenda over top of you, and it becomes a matter of how you accept them in doing that. You can immediately jump into the conflict of who's the biggest, baddest guy on the block and everything else, or you can simply use gentle persuasion and misdirection to get someone to make the moves you want them to make, just for the simple fact that you're making them. And now I'm probably starting to sound like Steve a bit, but yeah, I mean that's how it is. Uh, when you're talking about how I use ninjutsu, I've used it a great deal, and like I said, not every time as the way I would like. Uh, I've done several things which aren't exactly legal. I've done several things which could have gotten me in trouble. I pretended to be Russian one time to stay out past curfew. I was asked for my identification, and I just looked at the MP and said, "Niet, niet, niet," and he kept trying to stop me. I was like, "No svidanya, no svidanya, niet, no svidanya." That's all I said. Only two words I needed to say: no, no, bye, and just went away and ignored it. And it comes down to this that uh, ninjutsu isn't. You have to live your art. It's not just something that you learn. It's something that has to become a part of you. It's something that has to become a part of who you are. It's that spirit, and it's not just the skills. Don't get me wrong, the skills are cool, but when you accept that philosophy and when you accept that warrior philosophy of accepting your death, of accepting your demise, of accepting that your life is passed over to something greater than yourself, whether it is God, the Constitution, the Dalai Lama, some cult leader in a cave in Arkansas. I don't know. Whatever you decide as an individual to make that higher thing in your life, uh, you know, that's going to define the path you walk and how you're going to walk that path. The the skills, the tricks, the methods, all that other stuff. That's just coloring, getting around the philosophy of understanding who you are, what human nature is, and mastering your nature as a person to becoming a full human being, a full person, a person of a transcended mind, I guess you would say. Okay, well, there goes my little video rant, and